having a big, thick, fluffy coat like Oscar has right now because the weather seems to be feeling much the same way about the fact that it's Monday as I do, because yesterday we woke up to, albeit a very cold day, but a beautiful snowy morning, which was unexpected and such a lovely surprise because snow is always just so nice to look at. And today, Monday morning, we've woken up to such a starkly different scene. It is grey, it is rainy, and it is freezing cold, but despite being so cold, it's not snowy anymore, and the rain has just washed away any evidence of snow that was there yesterday, so it just looks quite bleak. But, in my opinion, there is very little that a good cup of tea can't solve. So without further ado, it's time to open door number 4 on my tea advent calendar and cheer myself up and warm myself up with a hot beverage. So here we have number 4, and of course we have to consult the back of the advent calendar and find out that today we have, ooh, I think this one's going to go down very nicely, sweet ginger. Probably of all of the flavours that we've had so far, I'd say that one is like the most traditional or like normal of teas, but ginger tea is a festive flavour and also just like one of the herbal teas along with mint tea that I feel like doesn't let you down in terms of flavour. Ginger tea always seems to deliver like a proper punchy strong flavour, and the flavour, I don't know if I've said that word too many times, but the flavour seems to match up to the smell, whereas other herbal teas like fruity ones just seem to let me down, but ginger and mint I like. So this one has, oh, perfect. It's actually not just a herbal tea, it's a rooibos tea. I love rooibos teas because they're just so warming. And then it has ginger, blackberry leaves, calendula petals and natural flavours. I think this one is going to go down very, very nicely. So I'm going to go put the kettle on and I will catch up with you for a taste test. The smell of this tea is absolutely nothing like what I was expecting. Obviously the flavour was sweet ginger, but I'm not getting ginger in the slightest. What I'm getting is such a familiar, recognisable scent because this tea smells exactly like a cough drop sweet. It just has this very recognisable smell that just seems like the combination of a fruit, which in this case is like a blackberry cherryish kind of smell, mixed with the like subtle mentholy minty flavour that you get in a cough drop, and it smells oddly delicious if I'm going to be honest, but I have very little idea how that is going to translate actually tasting it, so I'm going to give that another couple of minutes just to brew, and whilst I do I'm going to chat you through my reading plans for this week. So of course my priority right now and throughout December all the way up until Christmas is going to be my Little Women read along. So I finished the first 8 chapters over the weekend, and then this week I have another 13 chapters to read, so starting from chapter 9. And I don't really know off the top of my head how far that takes me, but I think it's probably like chapter 21 or 22, something like that, is what I need to make time for this week. So that is my first priority, but I'm really trying to be intentional with reading this December because as much as I'm really enjoying the Little Women read along, I don't want that to be the only book that I read throughout December, and so I really need to try and make sure that I'm just being a little bit strict with myself because I find it's quite easy to read during the weekend, but as soon as I get into the work week I stop making time for reading, and in my spare time I'm just on my phone or, you know, doing something else, but I don't necessarily like sit down during the work week and properly make time for reading. So this week I'm going to try and make sure that on my lunch breaks and before and after work, instead of just scrolling, I'm actually doing something productive, which in this case will be reading. So the other book that I'm planning to start this week is going to be Christmas at Rosie Hopkins' Sweet Shop by Jenny Colgan, and whereas I'm really trying to savour the reading experience of Little Women and just get like enjoy the whole process, I think books like this will be really, really quick and easy to get through. This one says, Rosie Hopkins is waiting excitedly for Christmas in the Derbyshire village of Lipton. Her sweet shop is festooned with candy canes, piles of Turkish delight and happy sticky children. She's going to be spending it with her whole family and boyfriend Stephen. But when tragedy strikes at the heart of their community, Rosie's plans for the future collapse? Can she build a life in Lipton? And is what's best for the sweet shop also what's best for Rosie? So I feel like this one is going to be fun. Jenny Colgan always does a good job of creating really like heartwarming, community-inspired stories, but that have like a little bit of grit in there, but you kind of know ultimately that they're always going to end with a happy conclusion. So I quite like that, especially at this time of year. Now I'm going to be going down to London later this week for my work's Christmas meal and things like that, so I'm thinking this will be the book I'll bring with me on the train, because as much as I love Little Women, it's quite a chunky book and also such a beautiful copy that I don't like to just shove it in my bag, and I will have loads of other things with me, so I won't necessarily have room for a big book, whereas this book should be able to slot in nicely. And since it was only secondhand, if it does happen to get a little bit crumpled, then it's not the end of the world. So I'm planning to read Little Women as much as I can throughout the week, but I'll be bringing this book along with me for a little trip to London. But now it's time to taste what I was expecting to be ginger tea, and now I'm renaming cough drop tea because that is what it smells like. So cheers to that, and let's see what it's like. It does just taste like a cough drop, but like a lot more mellow than an actual like minty one, but that flavour is definitely there. Like if you were told cough drop flavour tea, you'd probably think that doesn't sound very nice, but actually in reality, I think it's quite an enjoyable flavour combination. So do I think it should have been called sweet ginger? Probably not, because I don't think that's accurate to what the flavour actually tastes like, but I'm quite enjoying it. So there we go, cough drop flavour tea is a win. Welcome to episode 2 of Vlogmas. Well, I'm definitely not going to be breaking any records, but I did manage to read a couple of chapters of Little Women yesterday, which has taken me up to the start of chapter 11. And the chapters that I read yesterday, I feel like were such a good reminder to me of why I enjoy reading classics like Little Women, like Anne of Green Gables, and other similar cosy, wholesome stories. And the reason for me is that I feel like these types of books just perfectly strike the balance between the unknown and the familiar, by which I mean like the world in which this story takes place is obviously from a couple of hundred years ago now, so it feels very unfamiliar in terms of the society and the customs and the lives that the characters are leading, so that is like completely unknown to me and to my own life experience, which makes it exciting, and I guess like it gives you that vibe of like yearning for like a different type of life and something that is just so different from the lives that we lead in the modern world. So it has that, I guess, like appeal to it, which just makes it like interesting to read about because it is just so different from our own lives. But equally there is a sense of familiarity because these books at their core are really quite simple, and they're stories about, you know, like family, love, friendship, morals, and kind of like finding out, like, I don't want to say the meaning of life, but finding out like what's truly important about life. And I feel like those morals and the lessons that these characters learn along the way throughout their story are ultimately just like completely applicable to modern day life, which I feel like is a kind of very comforting thing in a sense, because it means that, you know, like no matter how different the world is and like how much the world like continues to develop and change, like the core of humanity I guess stays the same. And so there was a chapter which was, let me see what it was called, it was chapter 9 I believe, and it was, let me find it, why is it always the one chapter you're looking for you can never find? Okay, a long one. Okay, so the chapter was chapter 9, Meg Goes to Vanity Fair, and this chapter is quite an eye-opening experience for Meg because she is struggling with the, I guess, like desire to have like lovely luxurious things, but also feeling ashamed of herself for, I guess, not appreciating what she truly has. But she has this embarrassing experience where she feels like other people are judging her for not having as much money and as many nice clothes as they do. But in the end, when she allows them to kind of like pamper her and dress her up, she feels like she's kind of humiliated herself for other people's sake rather than for her own happiness. So she goes home and talks to her mum and Joe about it, and basically they just kind of realise that like money, yes, is a good thing and can bring you a lot of ease and comfort, and no one's denying that money is a helpful thing in life, but equally money alone won't bring you happiness, and material goods are kind of nothing if you don't have a family or a partner that you love and that you care about. And I feel like it was just a really nice and wholesome message, because I think today, especially, you know, in the modern world, things are like so easily accessible but also like fast changing, and so like trends come and go so quickly. And of course, if you don't have like an abundance of money, it could probably feel quite pressuring to just like constantly be chasing new trends, especially as a young person like these sisters are in this book. And I feel like the message still rings true, that material things are nice and they can bring you some sense of happiness, but they won't bring you true happiness if you don't have happiness within yourself and in your family. So I feel like it was just a really lovely, wholesome chapter that just completely reminded me why I love classics like this so much. So there we go. Obviously going to continue on the reading experience as I go throughout the day, but for now it's very much time for a cup of tea, and I'm quite chilly right now. My hands particularly are freezing, so regardless of the flavour, I'll be very grateful for a hot drink to hold in my hands, but I'm hoping for a cosy flavour nonetheless. So we are on door number 5. I nearly skipped ahead to 6 then, but no, it is the 5th today. So door number 5, and our flavour of the day is, oh, okay, candy cane popcorn. I feel like that is a fun and undoubtedly festive flavour. So we've got black tea, popped rice, apple pieces, white chamomile, safflower petals, and natural flavours. Without further ado, the kettle has already boiled, so I'm going to go for my Strasbourg Starbucks mug right now and give this baby a try. Oh, it does smell really sweet. Oh, that smells delicious. Okay. As always, I do not want to rush this process, so I'm going to add some milk in, and I'm going to take myself upstairs to my office, ready to start the day of work, and I will catch up with you for a taste test when we get to my desk. This tea smells absolutely delicious. If I was to describe it, I would say that it smells like a slightly minty marshmallow, so like a really sweet vanilla-y creamy smell but with just a hint of like a peppermint smell to it. So I think that sounds absolutely delicious. So without further ado, cheers to candy cane popcorn. This is one of those teas that just tastes exactly like what I just said it smells like, so it really is just delicious. I do tend to find that the black tea flavours tend to be a little bit more predictable in terms of like when you smell it, you're kind of like certain that that's what it's going to taste like. Maybe sometimes a slightly mellower version, but it pretty much is what it says on the tin, and when you smell it you kind of know what you're getting, whereas the more herbally ones I feel like can be a bit more of a gamble, which is fun if it turns out well, but also can be disappointing if it smells delicious but just doesn't quite taste as good as it smells. But in this case, we're on to a winner, and I am really enjoying all of these teas quite a lot, so that's always a win. Can't believe we're already on day 5 though, because that does seem a little bit ridiculous. But it's time to go for a day of work. I say go for a day of work, I'm here, this is work. Start my day of work at my desk working from home, but I'll catch up with you later on this evening. It's my grandma's birthday today, so we're going out for a carvery for dinner. Nowhere particularly exciting, or at least in my opinion. We're just going to Toby Carvery, which is not like a particularly fancy place, but that's where my grandma wanted to go, and also myself and my brother's fiance are both vegan, so Toby Carvery surprisingly actually does do quite good vegan options, so it ends up being a win for the meat eaters and the vegans alike, which I feel like when you have a family of some meat eaters and some vegans, somewhere that does something good for everyone is always a winner. So that's this evening, which means I might be a little bit lower on reading time today, but I'm still going to try and squeeze in a few pages of Little Women on my lunch break. I don't actually need to leave the house for another hour yet, but I'm just the sort of person who, if I have to go somewhere at any point in the day, I feel like the entire day up until that point feels like I'm in a state of rushing, even if I don't need to be. So this morning, I've spent the morning getting my bags packed, ready to go to London for a work trip for the next couple of days, and I'm excited to just take a moment and have a cup of tea before I leave the house to reinstate a sense of calm. So I've taken the liberty of preparing today's cup of tea. Yes, that is right, Raymond, I've made a cup of tea, and today's tea was called Green Sinapple. So if that's not obvious to you, it's cinnamon and apple flavour, and I'm always glad to love the flavour of cinnamon, because I feel like if cinnamon is in something, that is going to be the overwhelming flavour. So if you like cinnamon, that's a great thing. If you don't like cinnamon, then it sucks to be you, but I love cinnamon, and this smells extremely cinnamony. I think this might be the first tea so far of the advent calendar that is I feel like a fairly normal flavour. You could probably get cinnamon and apple tea in most places, and then B is also the first tea that I've made without adding any oat milk in, because it definitely seems more like a herbal tea than one to be had with milk in. So without further ado, let's try cinnamon apple tea. I'm fairly certain I'm going to enjoy this. As predicted, it tastes like cinnamon, a little bit of apple, but on the whole, nothing to write home about, but also a nice, enjoyable cup of tea. So there we go. I'm just spending some quality time with Raymond this morning before I leave him to go to London. Obviously Jay's staying at home, so he's not alone, but I won't be here with him all day, as I have been for the last few weeks, so chilling with him for the morning as I do a little bit of work. I also thought I'd update you on the books I'm planning to read. So obviously I've already told you I'm going to be bringing the Jenny Colgan book to read on the train, but sometimes trains can be busy, noisy, distracting, and I just can't get into a physical book. So I've also downloaded a couple of audiobooks just to prepare myself so that I can do some reading either way, and then I can sort of move between different books depending on my mood. So the Jenny Colgan is obviously a very fluffy, sweet, I'm assuming quite like happy and heartwarming story. So the audiobooks I've downloaded are quite the opposite. The first one I've downloaded is excuse me, The Drift by C.J. Tudor. Now C.J. Tudor has written things like The Taking of Annie Thorne, The Burning Girls, The Chalk Man, so very like dark and twisty thrillers, horrors, I think quite highly acclaimed by Stephen King, so I feel like that gives the tone, and I've enjoyed every one of her books that I've read so far. And the other book I've downloaded was actually recommended to me by someone at work, and that is sorry, The Only One Left by Riley Sager. I've only ever read one Riley Sager book, which is, I feel like it's something about a house on a lake. I can't actually officially remember the title, but I did quite enjoy it. I think the final part of the book was my least enjoyed part, but equally I did enjoy it on the whole, and I've been wanting to read more Riley Sager, so I thought I would take this recommendation and run with it. And then finally, if you were watching my vlogs a few weeks ago, you'll know that I had a trip up to Scotland not too long ago, and I downloaded a audiobook of Anne of Green Gables, which was narrated by Rachel McAdams. I listened to, I think, just over half of that on the drive home from that trip, but I haven't listened to the rest of it since, so that is also on my Audible waiting to be continued. So I'm gonna finish my tea, try and get calm, make sure I've packed everything that I need, and then I'm heading down to London to see Festival this evening. I'm staying at Em's house, we're going out for dinner, and that'll be really lovely. And then tomorrow is a work Christmassy day, so busy couple of days, but yeah, gonna be enjoying a train journey, which I always do. I feel like train journeys are always such an enjoyable way to just like unwind, do a good bit of reading, so I'm quite excited. literally just in the door from my trip to London and I am absolutely exhausted, but not quite so exhausted that I'm going to go straight to bed because I need to make time for a cup of tea. I actually haven't had a tea all day, I've just had coffee, so I'm absolutely desperate for a tea and hoping for a good one. So today is obviously the 7th, so without further ado, let's pop it open. Oh shit, I just bashed that whole door off. I'm really quite upset about that. Oh well. Anyway, number 7. So we have, ooh, okay, pumpkin whoopie, which has in it black tea, apple, orange, rose hip, hibiscus calendula, sunflower, cinnamon and natural flavours. So interestingly, no pumpkin, but it's called pumpkin whoopie. So I guess let's give it a try. I've already boiled the kettle because I am not waiting any longer for this tea than I absolutely have to. And then whilst the tea brews, I will update you on reading because although I'm absolutely cream crackered right now, I actually had a very, very productive couple of days of reading on my little trip to London. So let that tea brew and grab the book so I can talk to you about them. So, starting with a successful and completed read, we have Christmas at Rosie Hopkins's Sweet Shop, which I expected to be a fluffy and light-hearted romance with a little bit of grit, and it delivered on exactly that brief. It was a really lovely, heartwarming story. Felt like Rosie was a nice main character to follow along with. It was fairly predictable, but there was also a historical fiction storyline which kind of was a little bit less predictable because it was kind of a side plot rather than like the main focus, but it was a nice addition on top of the main story. And it is kind of like a, I don't think rags to riches is the right thing, but I guess like I can't think of any examples. Basically a situation where you've got someone who is of a much higher social class and someone who's of a bit of a lower social standing, and then them being involved romantically, and I guess like all of the complications that can arise when two people from completely different backgrounds kind of interact and try to create a future together when they don't really have the same background and therefore maybe have like slightly different goals and ambitions and I guess visions for what their future might look like. But on the whole, I enjoyed this. I gave it 3 stars because I feel like books like this are very rarely ones that blow you away, but they're always nice to read. Now, one of the books of this, I guess, like calibre that did blow me away is actually another Jenny Colgan, and that is An Island Christmas. I just loved that book so much. This one didn't quite live up to that standard for me, but I did definitely enjoy it. And then on the subject of festive reads, Em sent me home with A December to Remember by Jenny Bayliss, which she said was another very similar style book, so I'm definitely going to be getting to this one in the next couple of weeks, hopefully before Christmas. But yeah, that was it on festive and fun reading. I did then start listening to one of my audiobooks. I decided to go for The Drift by CJ Tudor, the reason being that it definitely seemed like a wintry sort of thriller. So I managed to get my way into this book up to chapter 23, and I have 4 hours and 52 minutes left of the audiobook, so I think I'm over halfway in now. I always find it a little bit hard to judge how long a book's going to be when it comes to audiobooks, or like visualise what that would look like in a physical book. I am enjoying this one, but it's a book that is split into 3 different segments. So we have 3 different characters, Hannah, Carter and Meg. And it's sort of telling the story from 3 different perspectives, and all 3 characters are essentially in an apocalyptic, I guess like survivalist scenario, but all in slightly different circumstances. So it's not entirely clear at this point if they're on the same timeline and we're seeing the same, I guess, like period of time, days, weeks, whatever, play out, but just from 3 different perspectives, or if we're seeing like 3 different elements of this apocalypse at 3 completely different times. So it hasn't yet become clear how connected the 3 stories are, but I would say it is very much giving The Last of Us kind of vibes, like very apocalyptic. There are elements of like viruses having gone wrong and things having changed like the course of the world, so definitely a pandemic inspired apocalyptic novel. So I would say based on that, it wouldn't be a favourite of mine compared to some of CJ Tudor's other books, which I feel like just have a much creepier vibe. I feel like this one feels a lot more modern, but I am definitely enjoying it. Of the 3 characters, I would say that I'm enjoying Hannah's storyline the most and finding that one the most interesting. That one is kind of giving the Lord of the Flies kind of vibes, where we have a group of students who have been in a bus crash and they're kind of left to figure out how to escape the situation. People are dropping dead left, right and centre, and then we have this group of survivors trying to figure out like an exit plan. I think that's very interesting. Then we also have a group of characters with Carter who are at a place called The Retreat. We don't really know too much about what that really means or like what its history is. I think Carter is an interesting character, but some of the other characters in his sections feel just a little bit too much like a character. They don't really feel particularly believable. They just feel a bit over dramatic and I guess like stereotyped into certain archetypes of characters. And then Meg's storyline is the one that I could really take or leave. It is just not particularly interesting compared to the other ones, so definitely going to keep listening to that book over the next couple of days. I'm hoping to finish that by the end of the week because I'm interested to see where it goes and hopefully to understand like how all of the different storylines kind of tie together. But for now I'm almost through with it, only 4 hours left, so I think I could just bash that out tomorrow whilst I'm sat at my desk working, and then once I've done that I need to continue on with Little Women. So a productive week of reading, but still lots more to do. And now time to taste my first cup of tea of the day. This smells extremely chocolatey. Very chocolatey. Has it got chocolate in it? It doesn't, but it smells like it really does. Like so chocolatey, I can't quite believe that. I'm gonna add some milk in as well. Do I have any? Oh, I'm gonna have to crack open a whole new oat milk for this situation. Okay. Making a mess as always. Right, without further ado. It's a slightly jarring experience because it smells so intensely chocolatey, but then the flavour is just very, very mild and not chocolatey at all, which I feel like you get this whiff as you go in to take a sip and then the flavour just isn't delivering. So I mean, it pretty much just tastes like a normal cup of tea, maybe slightly milder. So not a bad flavour at all, but not quite what the smell is giving, and also definitely not at all pumpkin-y, which is obviously what the flavour is called. So I guess the jury's out on this one, but I'll definitely enjoy a cup of tea because I'm just desperate to enjoy a hot drink. So without further ado, I'm gonna go and enjoy this cup of tea and I'll catch up with you in the morning for another one. I can't actually believe that we're already 1 whole week into December, and I feel like I have not yet fully made the most of the festive season. So this weekend I'm planning to dial up the festivities even more, starting with breakfast because I'm just having some toast, but I'm making it festive by using this Manny Life mince pie peanut butter. If you've not tried Manny Life peanut butter, it is genuinely the nicest peanut butter I've ever tried. They have like peanut halves as like the crunchiness in the chunky peanut butter, so it's just like super intensely peanutty but really, really good. So big fan of it, and they brought out this limited edition mince pie flavour for Christmas, so I'm gonna have that on my toast to make this morning feel a little bit more festive. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed that today's tea is a festive one, but there is of course only one way to find out. So without further ado, door number 8, which is apple crumble. Not very festive, but very delicious in my humble opinion. Apple crumble is the most delicious dessert out there, and it has got cinnamon and clove in, which are definitely festive flavours. So I'm gonna make my tea, wait for my toast to pop, and then of course I'll be back with a taste test. a very festive breakfast. This peanut butter actually has bits of dried fruit in it, so they haven't just gone for like a mince pie flavour, they've really gone all out and made it like actually a mince pie but in peanut butter. So without further ado, give this a taste test first. I didn't get any dried fruit with that bite, but it is very cinnamony, clovey, but also ultimately peanut buttery because that's what it is, but it definitely has a festive kick to it, and I feel like probably will be quite a good accompaniment to this tea because I think they've got similar spicy combination flavours. What's wrong? What's wrong? Right, cheers to apple crumble tea. It smells very, very appley, very cinnamony, and to me that's a wonderful thing. So, but I did just have an apple and cinnamon flavoured tea actually, so I'm interested to see whether it tastes any different to that. Probably actually a milder flavour than the green Sinapple one that I had. I think was that on Wednesday morning before I left, but it is ultimately just a herbal tea, apple and cinnamon flavour, so tasty nonetheless, but not one that I would probably like go out and actively choose to buy just because it's not a particularly exciting flavour combination. But it is nice, it is festive, and I'm going to enjoy it alongside my festive toast this morning. Now I think I probably chit-chatted to you for long enough for one video, so I'm going to close off Vlogmas episode 2 here. This weekend is actually coming up to stay with me after I've just visited her in London, and we have a very festive weekend planned, including a trip to York on Saturday, so that will be in the next episode of Vlogmas. But for now, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you next time.